Sure, what's the number again?
260,411.
Okay. Motion to approve salary and wages for the selectmen's budget of $240,411.
260,000.
$260,000, sorry, Alex, I was trying to save us money. $260,411.
Yeah, I like that.
Good try, Mike.
Second.
A for effort.
For 19, no, it's really bad handwriting.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, abstained?
There you go, Kelly.
You're the chair. Beth is at town hall. We're posting a meeting for 9:10 on Monday.
Yep. Thank you, Beth. My apologies to her. I owe her something.
Dinner and a math and then come to me.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and so I have to, let, 6, 9, 10, and Maxwell has to know that also. Okay. So now I'm back to the over guidelines section, which, Catherine, did you give me a stack?
I did, so that everyone's working on the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, did I hand them out already?
No,
How clever of me.
It's right there, down there.
Oh. Yep.
I appreciate it, just a moment.
mine's probably dated.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, let's
One
all
has
work
the,
off.
has the yellow
signature
strip going
first.
down the side.
Great,
So the only
This
thing
is the
then is that
322
this,
version.
the ones that say 312, you might just need to correct me if they're wrong in terms of what we're about that meeting.
Okay, selectmen special legal, you already voted at $5,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the 312 meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Town building, others, electricity and gas, you already voted in the negative. And any inclination to reopen? Okay,
That was at the 312 too?
that was at the 312 too. The PEG, we voted. The PEG advisory, that's withdrawn. The clerk other building rental was voted in the positive 312. And the clerk other election expense was voted in the positive 312. The clerk software, we had voted.
No action.
No.
The 2,500 and the 2,000, yeah, we're no
Right.
action.
But I,
On the 12.
And you've talked to Beth
so I've
since.
talked to Beth, but I've also talked to Trudy Reed in Linfield, so they have the same software.
Yep,
And, you know, she says it's from the same guy that does the dog licensing stuff.
yep,
But it turns out that it's a software package that runs well. And so what you essentially do is you have a records request, you log in from a portal on the website, you know, and then you can get your own email and get your own password you put in. And then you put it in and then submit it, and then it goes to the records management officer, or record accounting officer, access officer. And then she shoots it to somewhere else, and then it sends automatic updates, and it takes a lot of the bugging work out of it.
mhm,
And then her opinion is it works well, and then they do get a lot of support. So, she did say that you still have, they'll have to, even though she does it, there are a couple departments that don't. You know, there's a personnel management part of it that she has to kind of get on people for, you know, that they're still not doing it. But that if you then answer, so then, let's say I'm the access officer and I give something to you, and John makes a request and you mail it to him, but if you mail it from your town account, it'll capture that. If you go off and do it in your personal account, it won't capture that.
okay.
So,
It's a matter of discipline.
It's a matter of, so yeah, so there's a management part as well. So the part, I think my discussion with her, at least remove the software will be too hard to use or it won't work.
Mhm.
So I think it will work, I think it will simplify her job. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and so it's a $2,500 upfront cost
Right.
and then an annual $2,000.
2,000. But then I would tie this with the whole thing, right? If we're considering the whole, I know we're talking about all three of them. My inclination would be to run the experiment with the software alone and see if it relieves the burden, so we didn't have to go dig into the extra labor for the task. So that's the, consider all three of them.
Yeah, I'm still torn, flip side of the coin, I think if there was more people, I think my understanding of the software, and again, it might be limited, but I've always thought the software would work. I think it definitely brings efficiency, but at the end of the day, people still have to do that work. And I think the question is, whether our voting tracking is done manually or through some software, we still have to do everything that we're doing. So I think there's still people that need to carry that water to get that done. So I would say, I'm still in the note of the software and more of the temporary help to sort of see if the records request volume goes down or not, and then figure out more of a long-term software solution. And I don't wanna micromanage how the department wants to do it, and Kelly, I don't know what your point of view is on, if you had a choice between the software or some extra hours, what it would be. I don't think we're in a position to get you both today, even though we're sympathetic to all the work, and I think a combination of people and software is probably it.
But if we can only do one of the two,
I would do salary town clerk.
But that's
No,
not gonna
it is-
change, that's not gonna change the workload, by just bumping it, right?
I'm not talking about that,
Yeah.
I was talking about the temporary
Yeah.
labor.
temporary labor.
But the temporary
Right,
labor is
but
gonna
it's
be
in addition.
temporary multiple years? Are we gonna
Instead
be-
of adding new part-time staff member, upgrade reclassify town clerk position to allow funding for temporary part-time assistant on an as-needed basis. That's the 5,000.
Oh, there's two seats
Or
now.
7,000 is the temporary,
There's
salary is 5.
There's a step before. There's $7,000 for temporary help wages when you're busy in the office because of early voting and things like that.
But Kelly, if you think the software is gonna be more helpful than the temporary help,
I think it's easier to find money to buy software than it is to get people. I just anticipated that if this board were in favor, we could use free cash to pay for the upfront. If I had to sacrifice $2,000 in ongoing to pay for the ongoing maintenance, I think that if that had to come from the professional services budget, I think it would be a sacrifice for us to go back on that number, but I could probably make it work, assuming that we can have a discussion next year at the same time. So my recommendation would be that we would fund it, the $2,500 with free cash under special town meeting, that the $2,000 after year one could then be absorbed into professional services for BOS, if need be. And that we would, if it's not professional services, then within that computer maintenance line. I think that if we could, even the 5,000 we were talking about the last time, if we could do 5,000 on average, that would allow 6 hours a week on average for temporary wages. I think 5,000 is better than 0. If that helps make the decision any easier, at least it gives us some flexibility, it gives her some flexibility. She cannot continue to tread water in this department with this level of responsibility. She's received, this time last year, she had 17 public records requests. This time, compared to last year, she has over 36. This isn't slowing down, this is getting worse. I mean, we had a meeting the other day and somebody recorded the meeting with their phone, and 40 minutes after the meeting, it was a request to get a copy of the recording on someone's phone. This is not going away. People aren't moving out of the community who are causing 50% of these requests. And not for nothing, person aside, this is a mandate that the state has given to us and we have the responsibility to. And if you wanna ignore it, we're gonna lose a really good town clerk, because I don't see her continuing at this level and at this pace with this volume of public records requests, unless you can give her some relief with these tools that I've provided, that we've talked about, that we've tried to do, to make it bearable for her to keep up with this workload. I am just really, really imploring your support on this. I don't think we have a choice.
I don't think anybody
I know.
debates the stress.
Well,
I think the bigger question is, there's 36 public records requests worth $4,500 in software.
in 3 months.
Right.
But it's the amount of work saved in not having to do it all by hand.
Right, exactly.
And the automated notifications, so you don't miss
But,
deadlines.
so, yeah, of course, I could talk in depth of this, but you talk about the 36 requests, and I think if it was like some guy that didn't care, you'd like, oh, you just do the 36, then you'd forget about it. I think it's on Beth's mind a lot.
And some of them are complex.
Yeah, and
She has to respond or we.
right, I know she does,
Yeah,
but I think something that helps alert people so she doesn't, so it might ease, I think there's a component of that automates a portion of it. Then-
Is it more a reminding system or
It's tracking.
does it actually
Right.
compile the
No,
records for that?
you know what, you
Yeah.
can look in one spot where all, how many there are, you can see at what stage they're at and whose
Right.
responsibility the next one
I'm
is.
just-
But it's
I'm-
not actually doing the
I'm looking
fulfillment
at
of the
this
request.
as
No,
a
it's not.
package, and I'm saying you got 7,000 in clerk wages, plus 5,000 in part-time, that's $12,000, plus another 4,500, that's, 16,500. As a package,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree, but I think the separate, like, in Kelly's example, that request would come in, okay, given 45 minutes later, then Beth would say, okay, here it is, I'm assigning to the person who had that phone, you're on the clock. And then,
And she can do it in an email without the software,
uh,
but
Right.
I agree,
But then she has to make
Right.
notes so that she remembers when she
Yeah.
did it, so that the
right, John,
the
I
10-day
think
period.
I'm
it's
not
a time management system for her, the way she, in my opinion, the way she works
Well-
it's, the manual
Yeah.
system isn't, yeah, I mean,
I mean,
know,
if,
that's
if we drop the part-time wages for the help during busy times with walk-in voting and things, the original suggestion was 7,000, drop that to 5,000.
I'm desperate, so I'm willing to go to 5 and see what happens over the
yeah,
next
that's
year.
still, that's software and bodies.
But the software we can pay with one-time funds, as opposed to, you know what I mean, like, I don't, to me, I don't know. Well, anyway, I've said my opinion.
If we do the
have-
temporary wages this year, would you be back for us asking for the same temporary wages again next year, probably?
Perhaps. We asked for 18,000 for full-time, for a part-time person year-round, and I pulled back on that because I realized how much you're struggling with making this work. So I suggested temporary wages, so it buys us a year to evaluate what we said we were gonna evaluate this time last year. We've evaluated it. It's a huge burden, and so I came back with the 7,000. Now I'm saying even 5,000 will make it work. It's better than nothing, but we need some reprise. There's no way she can keep up with the level of work, and even 5,000 in temporary allows her the flexibility to work her staffing around elections and when there's peak time for these public records requests, which are clearly around the time of warrant, town meeting.
like
And
now.
I mean, it would be my goal to minimize, so if you were to appropriate the 5,000, I would certainly continue to work with her, and our goal would hopefully be not to need all that 5, but just to have that available to her is gonna be an enormous amount of relief to know that she can, manage her department effectively.
And there's no benefits tied to that. right?
Nothing,
No.
no.
So that the 5, would Beth be eligible for part of the 5 for overtime, or would it just be for a separate employee?
It would
She's
probably, she has a part-time person in the office now who's under 19 hours, who does not need benefits. So during those 2 weeks, during the elections, maybe she can have her come in full-time. Or she can hire an extra election worker to assist with the elections. or we can maybe hire the intern from COA to work a few extra hours to help cover the office so she can deal with elections or public records requests. So it gives her a lot of flexibility, and it doesn't tie us into a permanent, long-term solution without knowing for sure that we absolutely need it. I'm
Well,
willing
I
to
like
work with
that,
her.
I mean, I'm supportive of that, I think.
So I'm more inclined to do that as well, but I don't know that I would do that and the software.
That's right, too.
That's where I'm at too.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Well,
we can always, we can always try just one and get the extra people help and
then-
say, okay, does that take some of the stress off?
Mhm.
And then if it doesn't, well, then we're buying software next year.
All right, so you're gonna run a $5,000 experiment without software and then revisit next year.
Yeah, because the software is almost the same
Yeah.
dollar amount.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's
And-
not my
and-
first choice, but
and-
that seems reasonable.
Maybe some
Compromise.
folks will get reasonable in the community and ease up on the public records requests.
There will always be
Just a
some,
thought.
because there are questions about contract bidding and things
Yeah, no, I
that
know
come
there'll be
through.
some,
But a lot of
won't
it
be
too,
excessive.
but, I mean, Beth coordinates it all, but a lot of it too should
Yeah.
fall on department heads to help out with
I mean,
that.
I think
Yeah,
most of the
and it
requests come
does.
to your office as
It-
well. I think the, I
I'm
think the
trying to
airballs
help.
come in.
Yeah, because I don't
Yeah.
wanna send it to legal and have to spend
It's
$200
frustrating,
an hour.
right? That public records request come in, not only, so it's forcing us to be in this position to have to spend all this extra money, plus the additional legal fees that get spent going out to outside counsel. It's frustrating,
And it's a huge amount of time.
In an effort to reduce the budget.
in an effort to reduce the budget.
Well,
Yeah.
I,
It's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and we have the mandate.
You know,
we have
People
to-
don't
Okay.
understand the downstream impact of their actions.
well, okay, I mean,
Well, people
Yeah,
have the right to get
yeah,
information.
right,
Yes.
right, I,
Yeah,
right,
absolutely. I'm not
it's,
saying
But there,
that.
there
we
is
work
an
for them,
impact.
so to speak.
Yeah.
For nothing,
Yeah.
but,
I mean, the public records law has turned out to be more of a workload than I think the state thought when they
Yeah.
implemented it.
Well, I think they do,
Oh,
they
But-
don't care.
they're
That's
that's
another
suffer
fun-
people, no, no, that,
Another one of those
Your meeting has been posted for 9:15 on Monday evening,
okay.
and we got another request from our requester.
So I'll make a motion, that $5,000 be approved for, temporary wages for part-time help for the town clerk's office. This sits with, town clerk responsibilities, including her records access officer responsibilities in election maintenance.
I second that motion.
Okay, further discussion. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. And the public records management software, the purchase and the ongoing maintenance fee. Might as well have a motion on that.
I would make a motion for positive action on purchasing the software and the maintenance fee for next year.
So do both.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, yeah,
That we could vote on it, but.
I'm just saying, it was voted once, so it's a new motion on the table.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. We voted
What?
that, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true, we did vote it
We
down.
voted those down.
Oh,
Oh, good point.
oh, I'm sorry.
Was that last one?
Yep, yep. Did you want to supersede or?
No, I.
We can supersede, I'm just.
No, I,
You know, you can-
I,
you can be-
I, so I can, but let's just, I think it's not gonna have a
Let's
different
do it,
outcome.
I was just
All right, all right, all right,
clarifying
okay.
that, I don't think Dr.
Motion.
Young knew that it
Oh,
would
okay,
have
let's
to
have
vote on,
motion
that's all I was
to
clarifying.
and
The previous
Purchase
one?
the records access officer software for $2,500 to purchase it and $2,000 for the first year subscription for fiscal year 19. For positive action, motion for positive action.
Okay, is there a second for Mike?
Just die there.
That's okay, but you got to make a motion.
Yeah,
All
right.
right.
You have to make the motion. Okay. No second, so we'll
Okay.
leave that in a no.
Okay.
And the 10B, the salary bump for the town clerk, depending upon upgrade and reclassification. It's $5,000 to the salary reserve, which we've already voted, the amount. So,
Is that part of that 25?
yeah,
Oh, it's part of the 25. Okay.
I think so.
I don't think we voted
I don't
that,
think
we
we voted that.
tabled that one.
I think we
The
tabled
salary reserve?
it. Yeah.
No, you know, the salary reserve at 25.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah, we
really have,
voted for it.
it totally doesn't really have much,
I thought we
it's the
tabled it.
contracts
be
for,
this.
but I didn't know what else she had in mind for it. She's asking about 25,000,
Right.
just what it
Is
said to
that
me.
enough to absorb
I,
this?
I haven't done the math on all this yet.
Well, we may have to revisit Monday night at 9:15.
I'll run some
If
numbers
it's
to make
absorbed
sure.
already in the 25
Well,
salary
that's what I
reserve,
wanna
that's-
check, if I can
that's-
absorb it, then
that's-
there's no real,
Okay.
Well,
But there
We're
is,
still
it
looking
is
at that
there.
$319,000 hole here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we've got some things.
so if you wouldn't mind holding it, I'll look.
Yeah, well, we voted 25,000. This would not be an item at all because it's a personnel move that's
Right.
under your discretion, looking at responsibilities and consequences, so. Okay, fire supplies,
I'm
medical.
saving that for Monday.
We're saving that, the fire travel and expense.
You don't wanna vote it now?
We voted yes on the travel and expense.
Yeah, yeah, that one's there.
Didn't we already vote that?
We voted.
We did, we
three,
got
three,
3,
three.
okay.
Yeah. Animal control expense was no.
You guys voted that?
Yeah, but we kept the streetlights on it, almost streetlights
Yeah,
on it.
I was gonna say no action on that anyway, so.
On what?
Animal control.
Yeah. But the streetlights were voted yes.
Although we do think we should probably reduce the streetlights.
See how many animals die.
Put it in the dance.
Turn off.
Let's reduce it by 10% and let everyone, the selectmen choose which
Yes.
lights they shut
Yeah,
off.
we should just reduce it by 10%, I like that.
Thanks for keeping the streetlights on, guys.
That's what we could do from 7 to 9 on Monday. Field trip.
Rubbish collection, we voted. Park and cemetery, wages, labor, full-time. It's not a salary cost, but it's 20K for benefits, and we've not actually voted, I believe.
This is the second time these guys are in. They were in
Yeah.
last year.
And I think they gave us a heads up on it as well, the year before.
They did.
Yeah.
According to Steve, he's been submitting it on the budget, it hasn't gotten to you guys until a couple of years before that as well.
Yeah.
Through his board.
Yeah.
Based on the presentation I heard, those guys are in a tough position in terms of health.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in that position,
Yeah.
in terms of health.
We're sitting here agonizing over a couple thousand here, a couple
Yeah,
thousand
I hear
there, and we're adding 20,000 in ongoing benefits. And we're agonizing about a couple thousand one time.
Right, I think.
I'm
I think
sympathetic
the Parks
to
Department
them.
has a ton of pricing power on those fields. I just don't think it's that rough of a situation they have. If they wanna raise the money, they can.
I don't know that they made it that much, it made up $20,000, but.
Oh, I promise you, they rent those fields. I mean, I used to be part of a club that tried to rent those fields, and we would've paid any amount of money for them. I don't think it's that tough over there financially.
Well, it's a question of whether they want to rent to non-EAA kind of thing.
So I agree, I'm just sort of, now we're talking,
Right, then we're
Taxpayers
We as a
versus-
town are competing
uh,
for
Yeah,
space.
well, somebody wanna make a motion one way or the other on that one?
I'd like to hold off on that until Monday if possible.
Sure.
Yeah, we get to
The
get
heck,
Shay
you know.
and things, so.
11 o'clock, midnight,
Right.
whatever. It's my fault, so. Okay, Parks and Cemetery vehicle equipment maintenance, we already voted no. Parks and Cemetery groundskeeping, we voted yes. Library repair and maintenance,
people, we're waiting for Dana.
yeah, we might have been waiting for Dana. There's anticipated and unanticipated maintenance. Of course, the anticipated repair and maintenance is the contractual increases for the systems in the library. So that's one of those things that unless you want to not maintain them, you could vote that without Dana.
Yeah, I mean, so what I hear here at the library is like, the librarians don't wanna ride up in the elevator anymore, they actually. They'll like,
Too scary.
they'll like, they put the books in the chair, and then the president will run upstairs and they'll pull it out.
Because
So
it's
they
better
got-
to
they
have
got-
books stuck in the
No, I think
elevator
that,
than the
I think
person.
that's why I think someone got stuck once, and then Connor Brown had to come and push on the doors till they opened.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of a health benefit for the librarians.
We just want them to get their steps up there.
Yeah,
I think you're legally required to have a working elevator,
yeah.
Okay,
Well, it
that's-
works, they just don't.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah. So,
They wanna leave it to emergencies. What Catherine did, oh, there it is, I'm sorry. I lost the page. We voted the library service bureau fee and the library network administration, did we?
Yeah, I think we did both those.
Okay, I missed that. Catherine has it.
I missed it too, but I saw it in your notes.
Right.
I don't think we've been,
I don't think so, guys.
Really?
Okay,
I didn't see it in motions,
Okay, well,
some draft minutes.
it's,
So what the
it's
heck?
not recorded, it didn't happen.
Yep. Do we wanna wait those for Dana, or?
there's
do-
an hour missing on the tape.
That's
Is
right.
it 17
That's right, it
minutes?
was the hour missing.
No, this is the other thing I missed.
Okay, so we can wait all 4 libraries for Dana. Essex County retirement, we voted, health insurance,
Okay, workers' comp, property liability, we just voted all that.
yep. Council on Aging tracking software, we did vote, or you guys voted, according to my notes, so that must have been.
I think we approved that, right?
Yes,
Have them
yeah.
the records.
And postage, there was no action. Temporary rental space is being,
Those approved.
well,
it was
we'll,
approved.
yeah, but it's part of, it's gonna be part of special town meeting with turnbacks.
So it'll be withdrawn here then?
Yeah, it won't go into the operating budget, it'll be part of special town meeting. With turnbacks. Parks and cemeteries fire alarm monitoring, we now understand that, I think.
Do you want a motion? I think.
Yeah.
Sounds
yeah, I
like you
think
have
we
to do
need
it. So, I move that that $1,000 be added to the Parks and Cemeteries budget for fire alarm testing and monitoring.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor, aye,
Aye.
opposed, abstained. Okay, so that's done.
We voted no action on the holiday festivities.
Yep. We
Really?
did,
Yeah, we really missed that one.
we did, yeah,
We
that
did.
was Monday night.
What happened there?
Wow.
The landfill department for the monitoring, we did approve it at the proper $40,000. And then there's an offset from the old solid waste fund.
Second one.
We really voted down Santa Claus, huh?
Other sources of funding, not from the tax base, was the thought.
Gotcha.
Treasurer wage longevity and fire professional services, these are 2 new items.
You already voted the professional services, that's
Right.
the ambulance billing should be in
Yeah.
that blank
Yeah.
spot.
That's right.
And then
So
the
that's done.
longevity is new in that, it was just determined that there's an individual who has worked in the school system, has had continuous services, eligible for longevity in
Mhm.
FY19.
And so if we don't fund that, then she can sue us.
It's a personnel bylaw issue.
So if somebody would like to make
Because that's
a
my department.
motion,
Motion to restore the treasurer wage longevity to individual who was overlooked in the amount of $750 for the FY19 budget.
okay,
Positive action.
okay. Is there a second? Was there a second?
Oh, second.
For the longevity? Contractual obligation, bylaws, whatever. All in favor? Aye, opposed, abstained. Okay, so we have reached the end with those few still left to do. That are basically, we want Dana. Okay, now we're on to warrant article voting. Right after list out, are we good to vote the balance transfers at this point? Catherine, article second?
I think so.
Would someone like to make a motion for article second? Which is balance transfers.
Whose article is that, second?
I don't know if it's yours or mine, so I'm not making a motion.
No, I think it's me.
Oh, John, that's right, you took.
And I'm looking at that, I see my name next to number 2, so I'm assuming it's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Motion for positive action to transfer the amounts of 1456, 27,550, 10,000, 37,000, and a total of 76,006. For positive action, article second balance transfer. To be superseded.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so that one's done. Article third, we're waiting for Che and Dana, because that will wrap up in the library adjustments. That's been on it. That's been on it. That's the North Shore. Town facilities repair and maintenance fund, which is Article Article 18.
Article 8.
How did I 15? How did I get out of step?
So it's a grant authorization for town project.
Wait a second.
Oh, revolving fund is new.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't have a chance to mention that.
Oh,
I know all my numbering is off, trust me, I had to go through it a million times to make sure everything. So, if you want me to explain it.
yeah, we better vote Article 10.
Sorry, it's a new Article 10. Well, not a new Article 10, just a new article. Now is number 2. So, do you want me to explain it through the chair?
Well, it's the revolving fund.
It is, but what, last year when we voted the bylaw and we voted it,
Uh-huh.
the intent was that we wouldn't have to keep voting it every single year.
Yeah.
However, apparently the DOR has not hasn't issued its guidelines
Oh.
as to whether or not this needs to be revoted for the limits every year.
Oh,
So we have to put it in just in case. And we changed the wording to make sure that as we move forward, if the DOR does decide that it is appropriate to not have to put it in, the only reason we need to put it in after is if there's a change, like if we wanted to add a revolving fund or if we wanted to change the limits.
okay.
So it had to basically go back into the warrant to make sure that we've covered all of our bases, because it's unclear as to what DOR's decision will be.
I think the statute requires that you vote the limits every year right now, and there's pending legislation to try to clean that up to get to the real intent of the municipal
Good.
organization.
So that's why
Okay.
I'm messing everybody up with our numbers.
And because it's part of the consent agenda, you couldn't throw it in at the end.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be too easy.
Okay.
With-
I don't know who's got revolving funds. Might be using a lot of.
I can do it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing's
Did-
changed.
We have, so this is brand new, is there any issue with having it in the consent agenda?
Fish shouldn't
Oh,
be.
no, I did.
It's
You can
been in
pull
the
that.
consent agenda.
Yes, it always has. That was my intent. Did I not, Esther?
Yeah.
No, no,
No,
it's in
it
there,
is.
it's in there.
It
Oh,
is.
okay.
This is what, the second or third year in there?
No, this is the first year.
It's been
'cause
in
it's-
every year except.
Well,
Well-
we used to have separate,
Right.
Oh, that's
three
right.
separate articles
Mhm.
Right,
for each revolving fund,
exactly.
and then we tried to just make them
So-
sort of perpetual.
I will make a motion for positive action on Article 10 regarding revolving funds with fiscal year spending limits for fiscal year 2019 in the amounts of $45,000 for the park revolving fund, $25,000 for the cemeteries revolving fund, and $10,000 for the conservation fund, for conservation.
It's actually Conservation Commission revolving fund. That was a
And that's
typo.
been consistent since I've been on, it's the same 10,000,
Yeah,
it's been
nothing's changed.
consistent since I've been on here for that, so I'll second that motion.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay, let's see. Okay, so now we're up to what is now Article 18. For the town facility repair and maintenance fund. This version of the warrant suggests topping it off with another $25,500. With that, going to get done, odds and ends need to get done. The warrant,
Which number are we in?
18.
18th, the facilities repair and maintenance fund.
25,500. Yes, we've reviewed the balance. This would allow us to keep $50,000 in there. So after last year, it was 58,000. We've spent at least 30 of it, so if we'd add another 25, we can maintain that at 50.
Okay.
And hopefully if we don't need it, we can give it back in a future year, but just having it there has been a godsend for us to deal with any issues that come up mid-year.
Little bits and things.
Yeah,
So a question I have,
not that, Nick, that's
is there an updated, I guess I can add them all together, is there an updated chart on the, there's the 300,000 earmarked for capital, so it's the
yeah.
30 for the water tank, this is 25.5, the Hearst house is 25,
Yes.
the cruiser's 46.5, fire engine 2 repairs is 18, protective fire equipment's 40, and then there's record management of like X, right? So add
Yes.
those together, it's less
I
than
haven't-
300.
It's 200,000.
The 30,000 is not included in that, 'cause it's water at the price
Right.
fund.
Yep, that's
I knew that.
free cash.
Yes.
Yes, and I neglected to email that out to everybody. I have a chart that shows,
But I just need the total,
Yes.
so the total, right, so there's the X marks the spot for the records management, that's later, and then this
Okay.
25.5, if you add those together, it's around 200?
Exactly. 200, yes.
So the extra 100 is,
I was gonna
we could-
recommend,
is still in the free cash, and then we could put it toward OPEB or,
right, I was gonna suggest
that-
capital stabilization for future capital needs.
oh, okay.
Okay, so while we're here, Article 18 in the 22nd version of the warrant for repair and maintenance fund. $25,500 to add. Would anyone like to make a motion on that?
I think Che would make that motion, because he loves maintenance.
Okay,
Sure.
So does Dana.
So does Dana.
okay, well.
I do too, but,
We can wait,
no.
or you can just do it so that we can.
I'll move for positive action on 25.5 for Article 18 for town facilities repair and maintenance fund, to proceed it with future votes potentially.
Second.
So my question is this one of the few levers we can pull to reduce our deficit?
No, because
No.
we've already
Yeah.
moved the 300 down to 200,000, so we're already ahead of the game.
And it's free cash, which we happen to have a reasonable amount of this year. A quite generous amount.
So our levers are generally the over guideline. is
Those are the recurring costs.
Right.
I mean, some of them you can argue they're sort of fluctuating, like extraordinary special education, when it goes up a lot, you could argue that that's a one-time, and the next year it might go down, or not.
Lou, I sort of see your point, but I think stiffing maintenance for people is just like, not a good idea.
Yeah, because that's backed us into corners
Yeah.
and other places, other times. Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so that's done.
Lou, first house, right?
The records management,
Do we vote first house?
We did.
Cemetery?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
Favor.
The first house, yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
Because it's not the Hearst, it's a curse.
Yeah.
I'm doing that.
Sorry
Well,
about
it's a
that.
cemetery
Took it off
building.
altogether.
Monday night,
It's too morbid, I had to take it off.
The cemetery building, yeah.
Yeah,
This is like the monster.
yeah.
Okay, so article now called 23rd Comprehensive Records Management System, which is for digitizing and documenting, listing.
This is going to be not for well, through the chair, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't wanna be
that's fine.
disrespectful.
Yeah.
This is an older version, I've addressed, the whole scope of this article has been pared back.
Okay,
The scope is limited to creating a master plan for us to focus on the land use departments. The total amount being requested will not involve scanning and will not include any software. It'll be for $45,000, be directed at the land use departments, meaning the Board of Health, Conscom, Building Inspection Services, Planning Board, and Zoning Board of Appeals, documents and public records. That allows us to scale back the request and to make sure we have a methodical, very systematic way of determining and inventorying what records we have, what's a duplication, and what could possibly be destroyed prior to us moving back to the town hall. When these departments, the reason we focused on land use is because when these departments, which are all separate silos up until now, when we move back to town hall, they're all gonna be housed in one main office. And if you look at their collective records over the years, there are thousands and thousands of records. We're hoping that some of them are duplicates so that we can get rid of any duplicates. But before we can do any of that, we need to have an organized indexing system in a systematic way. The company that we found, we're working on a proposal, I should have that within a week, that will give us the exact scope of what they hope to accomplish, what they will accomplish with the $45,000. And our aim is that we would have a indexing system, we'd have the creation of a database, we would also have a plan in place with categorized way of dealing with a comprehensive document management plan. So this really we're gonna see as our first step in trying to figure out what do we have after 140 years of collecting records in the old town hall, and where we go from here. So we scaled back on the software, we scaled back on the scanning, because it might be premature for us to talk about scanning before we actually have a real comprehensive understanding of what we have. But we wanna do it now, rather than waiting, because we wouldn't wanna spend all of our time and effort and money moving duplicate records back into the town hall, but also the space issues and constraints that will be apparent when all these three departments go back into one shared space. So there's a practical and a theoretical way of looking at the rescoping of this article and really narrowing down the scope so that it was a much more reasonable scope. We're working with a consultant from King's Information Services. They've worked with many, many other municipalities to do similar projects. So for a little bit of consulting money up front, she's going to give us and prepare for us a very detailed idea of what she'll be able to do for this amount of money. So we'll have that in our hands before town meeting, and I certainly can present that and share that with all of you. before then. But with all of these added up, we came to the $200,000 for all of the capital requests, and that would allow $100,000 of the original guidelines to go back for whatever
Whatever.
you decide you wanna use it for.
Can you comment on like the downstream impact here? So if we go in for this, I'm assuming that there'll be ongoing
Well,
maintenance issues
I'll
and
phrase
things.
it a different way. I think what Eric's trying to get at is sort of conceptually, I think we all understand what we're trying to do here, but it's a bit, it feels a little I don't know if the specifics are ironed out enough to really know exactly what it is. So if we spend this money, what does it really get
What are
you?
we on the hook
And then what are we
for?
on the hook for
Right.
other money? Because
Yeah.
it's a much larger dollar amount
And an
to get
ongoing
everything that needs
maintenance
to
and
get
everything
done,
else that
right?
come into
So
play.
it feels a little bit like, you know, the elementary school's technology plan over the last 20 years. It's like, we talk about it all the time, and it's tweaking all the time, and so it's not that I'm against doing it, I think we need to do it, but it's the how and the what, and is this mostly, how much of the 45 is consulting versus, versus,
How many records are
right.
digitized?
And then have we looked
There is
at,
no
We're not
digitizing.
digitizing
Right.
records.
This
get
is
that.
just inventorying
This is-
and creating a database.
Right.
Indexing, database, categorizing what types of records, coming up with a system so that we have one address in one document that can be referenced by all three different departments and possibly down the road, be able to have that be accessible, if it's public record, accessible online.
It's
Are we able to-
creating an engineering
But
drawing
can-
number
This, you
system.
said this is the first step of many, so if we approve this.
Potentially, it doesn't, it's a
it could
be-all
stop-
and end-all.
It could stop
Yes.
here and
Yeah.
there'd be enough
Exactly.
benefit from it.
I believe so, I don't know that we have much of a choice. We started with land use, it made the most sense because we're taking all three of these departments,
right, but
combining
have
them
we
into one.
priced out doing something like Iron Mountain or one of those other services to?
For scanning,
No,
or?
I don't think we
It
can
just
store them
means
there.
storing.
No,
We need access to them, don't we?
yeah,
Well,
there are
depends on the
records, and
documents.
this is.
Everybody has rules about what you need to have on site
Yeah,
versus
and
what.
all the state retention manuals, they'll categorize them based on the state
Right.
document retention manual, the length that you need to keep them. They're doing an analysis right now, going into drawers, doing, looking at all our maps.
So for the 45,
Yeah,
sounds like 2/3 of that is just people services cost, and then maybe 1/3 of it is you're actually getting some nomenclature built, something like a Dewey Decimal System or something?
that's part of it,
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what 45 is. I'm sorry.
yeah. So it's not an exact science, which is why I had to have her come in to do some consulting, to give us a more detailed analysis of what actually it would cover and what they would be doing. But the focus is on the land use departments, and how those might be interacting with, say, the Board of Selectmen, for example.
So what would it cost to just move the stuff into the new town hall?
I haven't.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily because it will save you money moving it
No,
back,
right.
but that it gives you a place where everybody can refer to one document by the same number, and they all know that they're talking about the same
Yeah,
one. and-
So I get that digitization's wonderful, I'm just sort of, what's the unmet need next year that,
Well, I
that-
think once you
what-
have the system, you have
right, but right now,
have it
right now,
sorted
we're,
and filed.
Yeah.
I've tried to look for engineering drawings that are scattered all over the place and you can't find half of it, and you're trying to integrate one old numbering system with a newer numbering system. I don't know.
yeah, I just don't get unmet need, and.
Knowing what you have and where to find it, and that you've got the copy, and that everybody's calling it the same thing, I think has a certain value.
It's definitely, but the question is, are people really looking for planning board plans or plans submitted to the planning board, 5 years ago? I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised.
I could see it making sense going forward to have a document organizational system.
Yeah. And
Just-
when you go to digitize it, you're gonna need the system
Right.
set up, but you can make use of the numbering system
But
and
I
the
like
filing
documents
even
now
to
are
the
all,
paper.
right now, most documents come out electronic.
The new stuff, yeah,
new stuff.
but we've got a pile of old stuff that are historic documents for the town. And the original street layouts, I suppose.
Yeah, and we're required to keep many of them, especially with the land use departments, many of those represent permanent records that we can never get rid of. But if we have 3 different departments holding the same record for the same address, it, you know, before we would just digitize everything in their department, we would wanna know that there's 3 duplicates, so we only, down the road, if we were gonna digitize, we would only spend money on digitizing 1 set, as opposed to a set for Conscom, a set for Board of Health, and a set for Building Inspection Services.
And frankly, once again, we have the free cash to do it now. And you really can't just say, oh, we're gonna scoop all the free cash and put it against the tax levy, because you're screwed next year when you don't have that same amount of tax, that
I know.
free cash.
I just,
Can we hold this conversation until we figure out what we're gonna do with the hotel?
Yeah, we have enough free cash, I think, to do whatever we need. I mean, what, I think we'll even have some free cash that we can reserve against next year's debt bump.
I conceptually get it, I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm not saying we don't have the free cash to do it. Just, I don't know if the plan's big enough. I just, you know, it's, tonight we got Monday, and
Oh,
I get it at a high level, but I don't know.
well, until the woman's finished her work going through things to give a real quote, we don't know,
Or description.
we don't know the number. This is an estimate that it's enough.
Would more detail be wanted?
Mhm.
And it's her job to sell, so she'll give.
She's doing it,
Yeah,
no, that's
right.
not,
She's
we'll
doing
get
it.
it, it's
Yeah.
just that we have to come up with a recommendation without,
Okay.
it's like a general,
Right,
it's
so-
a number and a general project,
So
not
if you
a,
delayed
here's
this
a big
if you
plan.
delayed this for a year, could you have a higher resolution plan?
But timing wise, we don't wanna do it and bring the files back to town hall.
It's annoying.
That's the impetus, is to do it now before you have to transfer it back down. I got you.
So then you're really figuring out what you're bringing to town hall, and it's all organized in a consistent manner that
You
people
don't lose
can.
anything.
And then the stuff that you don't bring to town hall is the stuff that, from a document retention standpoint, you can put into some type of storage, something.
So isn't all that baked into the town hall budget, just moving stuff around and bringing it back and forth?
Some of it, but right now it's a big mess, and we have, I mean, we are
There's stuff
consolidating
stored all over the place.
everywhere.
Right.
There's at least 6 different rooms of documents, and, yeah,
I
I know.
agree that it's a mess, I just,
Yeah,
the
it's
town
not,
can live with the
it's
mess.
not secure, and it's not locked up.
Right.
It's, yeah, it's hard.
But I think if you're gonna do it sometime, next year, we don't think we necessarily have that extra amount of free cash. So either
And
we
you
take
put
it
it-
away and,
I sort of think the project's either worth the money or not worth the money.
yeah,
Um,
I think
so-
it's worth the money and we have money to
Right,
pay for it.
Yeah, you're getting out in front of the move. That's the big, piece. I wasn't really thinking much about that. We're moving back to town hall.
And you did move it all out of town hall, I mean, it's obviously movable.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
If we,
know.
do we have any idea of how much room at town hall or storage costs or that we'd save? And we, not that we'd ever go to Iron Mountain, but, I mean, how many duplicate records are we talking about? Do we have to fill up like a whole room at town hall?
At this rate, I think we'd have to fill up the whole basement, and every time somebody wants a record in the inspectional, in the land use department, they're gonna have to walk over to the old part of town hall to go, to shuffle through records, because we won't have enough room for people if we bring back all those records to those 3 departments.
But they do, in the plan for the new office, there is document storage.
There
cabinets.
is, but it's very limited, and now you have 3 departments trying to access that space.
And then you gotta ask yourself, did you spend $10 million on a town hall just so you can store records?
Well, that's what you said, I don't want to have space tied up for storage.
Right,
You
Right.
said-
I'm
right.
in full agreement with that one.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
that's a real issue then.
And that's part of the reason why the categorization that is going on now, the inventory, the categorization in the database will be very helpful. You know, just to know what do we have, what is duplicate, so we're not wasting and spinning our wheels. Moving 3 sets of records back to town hall for the
As
next
long as it's not
140
imminent
years.
that we have to, that this 45 needs to be then part of another $300,000 digitization
Right, well, that was
project.
part of the reason why I pared back on the
Yeah.
software, because the software is based, when the scanning is based on the premise that if you're gonna scan it, you need to put it somewhere, and you need an enterprise management system. So I decided that that could easily be a phase 2 that we look at next year, once we know what next year.
We're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the key in the code.
So segmenting that, is this project, does it have potential to lead to other decisions next year about maybe a phase 2? Absolutely,
we
but
don't
it's
have
not
to.
tying us into anything.
Right.
And next year is a whole new set of information, but we need the base information before we can really move forward. And because we don't have an IT person or, you know, or facilities manager, you know, some of these things, which is difficult to, you're right, it seems like a lot for something that I'm not an expert at explaining. I just know that we need a management system for all of these documents, or we're just gonna be drowning in our own paper, not knowing what's there and what we can get rid of. That's the other thing with public records. If you have it, even if you're not mandated to keep it, if you have it, you need to provide it. So just keeping it, even if we don't need it, is once again perpetuating this public records mandate. That if you have it, you need to produce it, but if we don't know what we have and when we can dispose of it, we're stuck dealing with this perpetual public records retrieval process.
Do we think we're moving to digitizing things at some point, like, so that this will not really be a useful use of this money, or we should go right to something that is a precursor to digitizing?
This plan will lay out sort of a roadmap for
It's
what.
almost a
we
folder
could do.
structure for the
That lets
digitizing.
you sort everything so that then when
Right.
you digitize it,
You could-
you
you've
could have
already
your
have it
database.
sorted.
You need a key, like an access
You could have your
database.
database.
That's what they'll
Yeah.
set up, they'll set up a whole access database with all the data
One
retention
key code,
schedules
that's
in
all.
Massachusetts. They deal with Massachusetts data retention all the time, so. Anyway, so I thought you'd be thrilled that instead of 140, it's only 40, 45, but ultimately it's your decision. I can get some more information, I was gonna do some slides for the board.
It's not a decision, we just make a
Yeah.
recommendation.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the town.
Anybody wanna make a motion, or do you wanna wait till Monday?
I'd move for positive action on it.
Is there a second? Why don't we wait for Monday?
I'll second.
Okay, further discussion? All in
Oh,
favor?
before we vote, I get the idea, I don't like, it just feels a little premature in terms of the game plan. And I think you're on the right path with the game plan, it's not your fault that the game plan's what the game plan's at, it's just, I don't know if it's specific enough. So, it's not that I don't believe it.
All in favor? Aye, opposed? And we do. Possibly to be superseded, depending on. Okay, General Stabilization Fund, Capital Stabilization Fund, and OPEB. OPEB, we're certainly waiting for, Shay.
Can I just ask, Kelly, do you think, is there a quote that you already have for that $45,000 that you could share with us for Monday?
I've just been talking with the consultant, and she felt that 45,000.
There's
Would
no,
be
like,
appropriate.
hard copy.
No,
She's
She's
working
like
on
my
it now.
Oh,
She should have that for us within the week.
But not necessarily before the warrant goes to
Correct.
print.
Right.
Okay, so I think the general stabilization, capital stabilization, and OPEB, it's sort of a group, and balancing.
That's the last night, next
Yeah,
Monday.
that's Monday night
Been
at,
the same for
And I think OPEB, he's thinking 3+.
yeah.
But we'll
But
see.
again, we have the free cash.
No, and that's
Yeah.
why we could do more.
And putting it somewhere where it earns interest is a fine thing.
Right.
Okay, let's see, marijuana?
All right,
I missed the
marijuana.
How was the meeting, Eric?
It was